My name is Steve Grzesik. I'm from New York City. I got drafted into the military. I served 2 tours in Vietnam, and I also did some short stints in Germany for a couple of months before I got levied out to Vietnam. I spent a year in Washington State, positively beautiful place, and then I went back for a second tour after a year in Washington State. I served with the infantry for a couple of months. I managed to get out of that. I knew I was going to die there. On my second tour, I volunteered for F Company Rangers. We went on missions out of Kuchi. I went on about 18 missions or so that lasted 5 days. Basically, we walked around the jungle looking for the enemy. The object was not to make contact, but to find them and report back in. After F Company Rangers downsized, I was let go and sent up to the Americal Division up north by the DMC. And I volunteered to be a helicopter door gunner. And that was the closest I ever came to dying. I flew in and out of Laos, and most of the time we got shot at. And in one instance, my helicopter got blown up. In another instance, it got 8 bullet holes. In another instance, it got 2 bullet holes. I was 21 years old. My first tour was 2 months in the infantry, and then a long stretch in an engineer company. But I didn't think that I was going to wind up in the infantry on my second tour. When I realized that I was going to go right back into the infantry that I'd gotten out of, I panicked and I joined the Rangers. I saw a sign that said volunteer. And after I left the Rangers, I became a gunner on a helicopter. These are 4 diametrically different experiences. I arrived in the infantry in 1968. It was just after the Tet Offensive. We got shot at almost every day. The Tet Offensive was still winding down. They called that part of it the Tet Counteroffensive. It was the heaviest fighting of the war, had just passed and was winding down. And I actually got levied out. A levy is an emergency order for soldiers where they just grab a bunch serving in a different unit, grab them for war. Basically like a draft within a draft. So I wound up in a jungle school for 2 days, just a whirlwind of airplanes, this, that, the other thing, bang. All of a sudden I'm walking in the jungle, just like that, after several weeks, including leave. And it was very simple. We'd go out in a company-sized formation out of a gigantic base camp called a fire base. It's just a gigantic clearing in the middle of the jungle, and that was your main camp. Well, not the main camp, the secondary camp. It's where you went back to. The main camp was back in the division headquarters or near it, where we actually had beds, but we rarely saw that. Most of the time was spent at the fire support base. And when we went on missions out of there, sometimes we just slept on the jungle floor. Matter of fact, most of the times we were out of the fire support base. And we just simply walked till we got shot at. It was a ridiculous way to prosecute a war. We knew the way the enemy was, but we didn't see him. We'd have to go into that jungle and start looking for him. And you usually didn't find him until they saw you first and fired at you. And of course, you'd be walking along and boom, a big explosion. Guy and Eddie would start screaming. We were walking along, and this one guy we had, big, fat kid from some major city, he didn't want to be there. He just walked and walked, looking down, sweat rolling off his face. And he tripped a wire. A grenade went off, a booby-trapped grenade, and both his knees were pretty much filled with shrapnel. I remember they carried him in right by me. His legs were completely wrapped in bandages, and fluid was coming through them. But he was gone for the rest of the war. Another time we had another guy that walked too far ahead, and an RPG hit next to him, and it almost ripped my shirt off. That was 15 feet away from me. That thing exploded. To this day, I remember the orange flash. It ripped my shirt backwards so hard, the blast, that I found myself staggering backward. And we had to run to go help a unit that had just made contact. And we actually left our supplies behind and had very few supplies so we could move quickly. We just piled everything up in the center of an area so we could run, because this was supposed to be an extended, I guess it was supposed to be like a several-day mission, and we had lots of food and water. But you couldn't move too well with it. So we just stacked it up to go help the unit that had been hit. And it's a company-sized unit. And all of a sudden, from everything that had been going on, the jungle was on fire. And I'm hiding behind a tree, expecting the enemy to come from my front. But meanwhile, I've got fire coming from my back. It was total chaos and confusion. So they had us get up, and we moved out. And we started walking again. And we started getting in the area where the enemy was, where that contact had been made. And I think we turned to move left, and we didn't move very far at all. Boom, right next to this thing just went off, this RPG. And I know it was an RPG because the flash was orange, sort of orange colored. That's the hallmark of an RPG rocket. I never really heard it get launched. I just heard the hit. It's a pretty fast rocket, so maybe the sound would have arrived at the same time as the launch sound. I don't know. But it was an orange ball, and it got the guy in front of me. My very first encounter with hostile fire, it was actually my first day out in the field. I got to the unit, and they sent me out to the fire support base in a helicopter. And the very first mission we went out on was in the Michelin rubber plantation. The same people that make Michelin tires, I was in the Michelin rubber plantation. And sniper fire, just crack, 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 crack. Sniper fire ahead of me. And it hit right by me. Right by me. It's like he was aiming at me or something. And I was brand new to the unit. So we had been walking single file forward, and instead we changed that to abreast. In other words, we're now walking in a line. Instead of the line being a straight line, the line is now a horizontal line. I don't know if you pick what I'm trying to say. Well, we're walking this way, you see? One man next to the other. And we walked right under that guy. And he started firing at us from the rear this time. And Rosario, the crazy machine gunner, no, the grenadier, Rosario, the grenadier, ran back towards him, and I jumped up to run with him. And somebody grabbed me and said, "Don't do that. Don't go with him. He's nuts." So Rosario ran towards him, just firing incidents, but called the helicopter gunship, and the helicopter gunship found this sniper sitting in a tree. They saw him from far away. He was so high in a tree, he was easy to spot from the air. They saw him from far away and just blew him out of that tree. The machine gunner did it on a helicopter. Well, after F Company Rangers broke up, I was sent up north to the Americal Division by the DMZ, notoriously bad place. And I walked into some major's office in mission headquarters, and I told him it was my second tour. I'm not going into the. I was a ranger. I'm a hot shot. Why should I go infantry? I don't want to go. And I was pretty vocal about it. So I walked in there telling this major all the reasons why I shouldn't be in the infantry. And he basically said, "Okay, fine. What do you want to do?" And I said, "I want to be a door gunner." And I could tell he smirked to himself. And he made me a door gunner. And I became a door gunner. And my responsibilities were when the helicopter pilot announced that he was going up, he would say, "Coming up." And I would stick my head out the door and look to the front and the back of the bird to see if it was clear. And I would say, "Clear up right." And then the crew chief on the other side, the other gunner, would say, "Clear up left." And we would take off. And when we landed someplace and be there for an 8 amount of time, it was my responsibility to tie the rotors of the bird to the tail so they wouldn't idly spin. So other helicopters could land close without touching blades, I imagine. And also the other responsibility was to fuel the bird if we were landing with fuel. The crew chief would stand next to me with a fire extinguisher while I fueled the bird. Usually there was a fire extinguisher at any fueling spot, which is actually one of my most interesting stories from Vietnam when we got blown up at Lane Bay. But anyway, so they made me a gunner, and that's what I did. And the very first day that I took off as a gunner, we flew into Laos. And as we're flying into Laos, I listened on the radio to the other transmission, taking fire, mayday, mayday, going down on it. Somebody saying, beeper, beeper, come up voice, which means talk to me on your handheld radio. And he never came up voice, which means he probably got shot down and blown up or something. And other guys talking about taking fire, and other guys warning other guys, do not fly that route because it's dangerous. Negative, don't go that way. Just chaos on the radio in Laos. And this is what I'm flying into. And we flew directly in there and I had to abort because immediately took fire. And then I think it was the second day out doing this. I got 3 bullet holes in the bird. No, wait a minute. Second or third day, I got 3 bullet holes across the floor, 1 by the pilot's foot, and 2 or 3 in my door, right by my head, because the door was always open. So we did that, flying in and out of Laos, taking troops in. It was mayhem. It was first we took the South Vietnamese into Laos, and then in no time flat we had to evacuate them because they got routed. They just were getting slaughtered in there. We'd come in from 10,000 feet, and by the time we were at 5,000 feet, I could see white specks all over the ground. The white specks were bandages, and just hordes of Vietnamese soldiers looking up, wanting to get out of there desperately. It was total chaos. The helicopter would get swamped. We'd never land. There were guys hanging onto the skids, wanting to get out of there. I never dropped anybody, but damn near did. I would tell the pilot not to land onto the ground because they were already swamping the bird. And I would count to them. I'd tell them that we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Take it up, take it up. And we'd have one guy on with one hand. Of course, he'd have to let go because he can't get up with us because we're already going up and he's only holding onto a skid with one arm. It was complete pandemonium. The Vietnamese knew they were going to die there. What happened was that particular day, we weren't flying into Laos. It was a relief. We were flying on mails around the plateau, guys out in the field. I mean, it was still dangerous because we're delivering supplies to guys out in the field. Another thing that we did, this unit had gotten hit really hard, and we had to go get 2 of their dead. And that was an interesting thing, too, because we came down to get these 2 guys, these 4 guys that were dead. I mean, one guy was just a big blob of jelly. He shook like a bowl of Jello because there was nothing left of him. And the other guy was just burnt and curled up. And we went down and we got these 2 bodies. And as we're lifting off of the 2 bodies, I looked at one of the guys on the ground, and it was a guy I knew from Fort Lewis when I was stationed there. And I screamed at him, I waved at him, but there was I doubt he was. But so that day, we were flying around. We got the bodies that day, for example. We delivered some mail, and we weren't doing anything particularly dangerous in Laos. We were still out in the field. Like I said, we removed bodies where they had gotten hit. That was a dangerous approach. But we had been flying around, and there was a place called Lang Bay where the Green Berets had gotten hit really badly in '68. And we were flying around Lang Bay because we'd had a refueling stop there. They had built a refueling stop for the Laos invasion near Lang Bay, not at Lang Bay, but near Lang Bay. But they had to abandon the refueling stop because it was bracketed by mortars from the surrounding hills. It didn't work. Everybody kept getting hit all the time. They had to abandon the idea of a refueling stop for the Laos invasion at that particular spot. But somebody left behind a big fire extinguisher, which makes sense. Fire extinguisher at refueling stop. You got to have an extinguisher when you're refueling a bird. So the pilots started eyeballing this fire extinguisher and deciding they wanted to get it. They wanted to trade it for a case of steaks. Something about the mess sergeant needed a fire extinguisher, and they were going to trade it for a case of steaks. And I didn't need it. This is a terrible one. There's a reason the place was evacuated. It's because it's bracketed by mortars. And I just dreaded the whole thing. I had a creepy feeling about it, But we went down, we landed right near the middle of that, it seemed like the middle of that clearing. There wasn't much there that I can remember, but that fire extinguisher was there. So Baggett the crew chief jumped out to get it. And we landed, and I didn't see Baggett jump out to get it because he's on the other side of the bird. But we touched down. We're there for about 6 seconds. I imagined Baggett getting that fire extinguisher. And all of a sudden, it felt like my head was in the Liberty Bell. Somebody hit it with a sledgehammer. I was out of it for like a quarter of a second. When something blows up, you're out of it for a half a second. And that's what happened. Anyway, so I'm up in the air. The pilots had taken off after this explosion. And I'm looking down because it's chaos. It's always chaos in a moment like this. And I see the crew chief on the ground. He's waving his arms at us frantically. And I could tell that he's not just saying you forgot. He's also trying to tell us something else. Oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you something. I always forget to mention this. We had a hitchhiker with us. There was a policy in Vietnam that if you're going from point A to point B and somebody needed a ride, took them. There was this black soldier, scruffy-looking guy. I imagine he was infantry. He had no name tags or anything. He was a mess, but he had hitchhiked a ride with us. After this explosion happened, I told you, we took off. We're 50 feet up in the air when this guy jumps out. He just got in the door deliberately and just jumped out. I don't know what he was thinking. He panicked. Anyway, so we're up in the air. Baggett's down on the ground waving at us, the crew chief. This guy already jumped out of a helicopter. We moved forward a bit, and now we're coming back down again. And we come back down, and Baggett takes off running into the woods. I think that's what happened. But next thing I see is the pilot gets out, and he's running towards the wood line. And I try to get out of my helmet, but I had wrapped the buckle, my seatbelt buckle, with the excess on my seatbelt. I was a skinny kid, and the excess seatbelt used to flap in the wind. And I, like a jackass, I wrapped it round and round the seatbelt. And it took me many turns of unwinding that. I thought I was going to burn to Vietnam. Oh yeah, I didn't mention the helicopter was on fire. The entire other side of the bird was on fire when we landed. And that's why Baggett ran to the bird. And when she's just carrying on like this, the bird was on fire. And I looked at the back and I could see it. I could see the flames. That's from the explosion. It hit the fuel cells, I imagine. But, so we got all this crap going on, and I'm taking my time getting out of the helicopter because I have to unwind all the excess seatbelt from around the buckle. I almost sealed my own fate in Vietnam by doing that. Because had I panicked, I couldn't get the seatbelt open until I unwound it one turn after another. But anyway, I finally got out of there, and the co-pilot had been waiting for me to let him out. He kept looking at me, because my job is to get out to the front of the bird and open the door. I didn't realize that he had 3 emergency pins on that door. By the time I finally got out of that helicopter and started opening this door, I reached for it to open it for him, and the entire door fell off. He pulled the emergency pins. The entire door fell off and hit me in the head. Anyway, so we started running for the wood line. And when we got to the wood line, they sort of didn't know what to do. And I led them into the thickest stuff I could find. About another 70 yards into the jungle, there was a thick clump of vegetation. And my ranger experience told me that was where we needed to be. Because if you go into a thick clump of vegetation, nobody can see you. Also, it absorbs some shrapnel if you get hit. So there we are. We're in a thick clump of vegetation, and nobody knows we're there. I forgot to bring the M60 machine gun. Nobody grabbed any weapons. I think one pilot might have a pistol. I don't remember. And there we are. We sat there, and the helicopter burnt. And after a while, I realized that nobody's going to save the state. If we didn't save ourselves, we could be in big trouble because clearly the enemy knew where we were. Now, I had a signal mirror in my pocket that I had kept from the days of F Company Rangers. I pulled out that signal mirror, and I learned how to use it on the fly. I actually went out into the clearing, located the sun, and looked around, and I saw a helicopter about 1.5 miles in the distance. And I started flashing them with that signal mirror because what happened was we just sat there, and the situation wasn't going to solve itself. I knew we were in a dire situation, so I'm the guy. I ran out into the clearing, and that black kid was still laying there, crumpled up in a heap. And I ran into that clearing, and I carefully looked around, I looked towards the horizon, and I crept out onto the clearing. And that's when I realized that there was a 1.5 miles away. Now, our helicopter was burning. There was a plume of smoke coming off, but that plume of smoke didn't mean anything to anybody, I don't think. But I took that signal mirror, and I started flashing that helicopter 1.5 miles away. I learned as I went. I just kept moving that mirror like this until I had a dot of light on it. And I knew that when that dot of light was in the center of the hole, that's where the flash was going. I just knew that instinctively. And I just carefully moved that mirror like this until the dot of light was in the center of the hole, and the center of the hole was on the helicopter. And once I did that, I just started going like this. And he saw it. And I ran back to my guys. And then within a minute, I think it was a Cobra helicopter, came and did one circle. Somebody came and did one quick circle over that area. So we'd been seen. So I got all the guys and I moved them out there closer. I think that's what happened. That's what naturally would have happened. But the next thing I knew, a helicopter came. It's in my book. My memory 2 years ago is better. This is a book I wrote. We had to get out of that place. It won 3rd place in the Military Writers Society of America. Anyway, that's my plug, my shameless plug for my book. I believe what happened was a helicopter gunship came and started flying circles with his nose down, with all his rockets and machine guns, and a regular picked us up, and that was that. And then, of course, we got debriefed, and I had to tell the major that the truth about what happened. I tried to downplay how stupid it was that we went to such a dangerous area to make an unauthorized landing. But that's basically the long and short of it. We made an unauthorized landing in a dangerous area on the Laotian border that had been evacuated because it was so dangerous. We landed there to get a stupid fire extinguisher, and I could have died because of it. I mean, we didn't get a direct hit with an RPG because the whole helicopter would have exploded. We got hit with tons of shrapnel. I think something landed by the bird, boom, a tremendous explosion, but the bird was still intact. It just had a lot of holes in it, obviously, because it was burning. Those are the fuel cells burning from fuel leaking, you know? That's why I'm guessing it was a mortar round. When we were in the jungle, we ate sea rations, basically canned food. And it's not bad. I mean, you can always, people pick out their favorite items. I used to like to mix canned peaches with pound cake that came in a can. It was absolutely delicious. When you put canned peaches on top of it, to this day, I have tasted it. It was good, like strawberry shortcake. But there was beefsteak and potatoes with gravy. There was ham and lima beans, which only a couple of Southern boys like. That was the one that got traded away the most. There was some kind of eggs in a can. That wasn't a favorite either. But by far, beefsteak and potatoes with gravy was the favorite. And there were other cans that had crackers in them, other little packs of 5 cigarettes, gum, toilet paper. Came in the sea rations. All these sundry packs. Also, we got these sundry packs. Had tropical chocolate, which was horrible. Chocolate that didn't melt. But I mean, it had sugar in it. It was tasty if you had nothing else. I met a lot of people in Vietnam. We had, well, first of all, the Mamasans, they used to come on base. Half of them were spied for the Viet Cong. But they were still friendly. And they would do laundry. They would do our laundry for us, sweep the barracks, you know. I like the Vietnamese people. They're very childlike and innocent. And yet, at the same time, they can go from 0 to 90 viciousness. I saw it in Saigon. I saw a taxi driver get out of a taxi with a tire iron and literally go from 0 to 90 over an argument with another taxi driver. And I saw incidents like that more than once. I mean, they'll go from speaking calmly to turning red with a vein throbbing in their head in a matter of 3 seconds. It's 2 seasons, rain and no rain. That's it. And when it's no rain, it's hot. And when it's rain, it's hot and wet. And even though it's hotter in the dry season, it seems like the wet season, just the discomfort of the humidity got to you. I was younger and we didn't have air conditioning, and you actually get used to it. I actually got used to it. I mean, there's times where I was more comfortable in that horrible heat than I am these days. Sometimes you just got used to it. Plus, you're young and in shape. But it was absolutely weather extremes there. I remember sleeping in the jungle on an infantry mission, sleeping in 6 inches of water out on an ambush patrol, which is absolutely ridiculous. Officers had to do things, and they were forced to make stupid decisions. So dark that you can't see anybody, and you're sleeping in 6 inches of water, and yet you're supposed to kill somebody if they come along. My feeling was I'd wind up killing half of my guys by accident. My one famous encounter, well, not famous, but my one notorious encounter with wildlife, we were on a ranger mission. And the way we'd operate in the Rangers, we'd walk about 500 meters. It depended on the team leader. We'd walk a certain amount, and then we'd stop and listen. And of course, if we were in a dangerous area, we might do this every 50 yards. And other times we might do it every kilometer. I don't know, but it varied. But we'd stop and listen. And this one time we were walking along, and we took a break, and we stopped. But I don't remember if we stopped to listen or if it was just a break. But we sat there very quietly. Nobody's moving. And out of the corner of my eye, and there's a lizard that's about, with his entire tail, it's got to be 5 feet long. I mean, the main part of his body was at least 3 feet long, you know, to where the tapered. And this monster is walking towards me, and I'm not moving at all. And he walks within 3 feet of my left knee, because I'm basically on the ground in an upright position. Maybe I'm against the tree, I can't remember. But I'm laying, you know, my feet outstretched in front of me, and I'm not moving. And this thing came within 3 feet of my left knee and started digging furiously. And it dug up what appeared to be 3 balls of animal feces and cracked it open and started eating the maggots from the inside. He dug up feces. Maybe he had buried it, I don't know. But he dug up these balls of crap and started eating the maggots from inside of them. Broke it open with his claws like this. And then he left.